Chapter 1, Section 1, Matter and its classification. Before we know is how to classify matter, we have to know what is matter. So the definition matter is anything that occupies space and has mass, like the building, like the desk, like the computer, the whole earth, you and me, we are all matter because we all occupy space and we have mass. And the opposite of the matter is energy. Energy are not matter. Why is not matter? Because it does meet the two requirements: spaces or occupy spaces and has mass. And you cannot weight energy. For example, heat and light. So it has no mass and don't occupy space. So now let's learn how to classify matter. So when we class matter, and the first two group we can put the matter in is pure substance and mixture. Inside the pure substance group, we also have element and compound. Element can be non-metal and metal. So inside the mixture group, we can divide it into homogeneous mixture and heterogeneous mixture. So this is the overall map of classification of matter. Then we will dig into each of the groups. And let's start from the top and then we will go down. So we will go to pure substance on the left branch. So we will go this way first. And we start with pure substance. So we already know under matter we can have pure substance and a mixture. So what is the pure substance? And pure substance have uniform chemical composition throughout and from sample to sample. For example, I have water. Its composition is H2O. So no matter you are bottled water, tank water, and pond water, and you all have H2O. So you are a pure substance and have the uniform chemical composition, which is H2O. And what is a mixture? Like I have salt water, sodium chloride plus water. So mixture are composed of two or more pure substances. By itself, table salt is a pure substance, and water is a pure substance too. But if I mix these two together, it's gonna make a mixture. Okay. Now let's have a look at under pure substance. What we have: elements and compounds. What's the difference between elements and compounds? How can I tell one is element and another one is compounds? Elements. Element is a substance that cannot be broken down into simpler substance, even by a chemical reaction. What's that mean? So, like I have H2O, right? No. I have hydrogen or oxygen. They are all elements, and I cannot break them down into other simpler substance, even with a chemical reaction. And in the element group, you can be metal like gold, silver element, and it can be non-metal like hydrogen, oxygen, and those are example of non-metal element. And so What is compounds? Compounds is a substance composed of two or more elements. Okay, like I have two or more elements to make a compound. For example, if I put hydrogen and water to make a compound, I can make water. Hydrogen and oxygen to make a compound, I can make water. And not all the combination can be water. So I cannot put three hydrogen, one oxygen. That's not water. And it has to be in a defined proportions. It has to be 2-to-1 ratio. Okay. Simple mix of the element does not make a compound. To make a compound, you have to follow a defined, definite proportion. And compared to element cannot be broken down even by a chemical reaction, but a compound can be broken down into simpler substance. For example, we already know water is a compound. Water can be broken down into hydrogen and oxygen gas by a electrolysis. If I go through a current into water. If I pass current, electricity through water, so I'm gonna break the water molecule into hydrogen gas and oxygen gas. They are simpler substance. So, big difference, element and compound. Can you be breakdown? Then you compound. Can you not be broken down into simpler substance? Then you are element. Okay. And inside element, we know that it can be metal or non-metal. So I already give you example: gold, silver, non-metal, hydrogen, oxygen. So, and all known elements are organized in the periodic table. So far we already know 118 elements. They organize in the table into rows, into columns. Each of the column is called a group. Each of the row is called period. So, and you can see the blue color is non-metal. Blue color, non-metals. And the green color, metalloid. Metalloid. And beside metalloid and non-metals, among all these 118 elements, the rest are all metals. As you can see in the table, majority are metals. And how can we tell some element is metals and some element are non-metals? So for metals, we see, are you solid at room temperature? Are you shiny? Are you good conductor of heat of electricity? Are you malleable or can be shaped into different object? And or ductile, which means can be stretched into wires, and have a high melting point or high density. So if you have all those properties, then you are a metal element. And metals can be combined with non-metal to form a compound, like silver. Girls like silver jewelries, and those silver jewelries exposed to air for a longer period of time will become blank. Why to become blank? Because it get oxidized and become silver oxidant. So this is metal, this is non-metal, and they can combine into a new compound. Okay, but metal and metal cannot be combined into a compound, and they can only become alloy, metal alloy. And so what's the property for nonmetals? How can determine an element is a nonmetal? You're gonna see, is this element shiny and have fair low melting point and density, and are poor conductors of heat and electricity. So if they have those properties, and they are non-metal elements. And compared to metals, they can only combine with non-metal to make a compound. But a non-metal can combine with metal to make a compound, and also can combine with non-metal to make a compound. Like hydrogen by itself is non-metal, oxygen by itself is a non-metal, but if they react, they will make a compound too. Even both of them are non-metals. Okay, so here is the property of metal and non-metals in the element group. And remember, even you are metal or non-metal, no matter you are metal or non-metal, you are still belong to the pure substance. And sometimes you're gonna see this type of activity give you a lot of matter, asking you to give you a lot of elements, ask you to classify them as metal or non-metal. So just recall the property difference between the metal and non-metal. You should be able to do those activities. Okay, so to make our life easier, and we like use symbols to represent elements, and we use formulas to represent compounds. That's make our life easier in chemistry. And element symbols often consist of one or two letters of the element's name. And for example, carbon, the first letter is C, so I use carbon represent, I use C represent carbon. So calcium, so we are not using C, since we already use C for carbon, so we use Ca to represent calcium. And but some of the symbol is not from the element's name, at least is not from its current name. For example, so iron, and its symbol is Fe, which is not from its first one or two letters. If it is from the first one or two letter, we should call this I or IR for iron, but we are not. We call Fe. We use Fe as the symbol. Why? Because that comes from its original name, ferrum. And ferrum starts with Fe, so we use Fe. And the same thing for potassium. Why potassium is not its symbol is not P, instead is a K. So that's also from its original name, Kalium. As you can see, and its original name, the first letter is K. Okay. So what do you need to know about elements and a symbol, or in other words, what is the requirement for you for the symbols and of the element? And all the elements and which require you to remember their symbol and their name are listed here. So you have 56. You have 56 elements, and if I give you the name, like I give you aluminum, and you need to know its symbol is Al. If I give you Al, you should be able to write the word aluminum, and that will be your first proficiency test. And I won't give you any other element beyond this 56. We had 118 elements. I will ask you to remember the name and the symbol just for these 56 common ones. Okay. And we already finished the introduction of the element in